Hello, and welcome to Unity of Fredericksburg. My name is Andrea, and I'm pleased to welcome all of you to Unity of Fredericksburg's weekly online gathering. At Unity of Fredericksburg, we are advancing the movement of spiritual awakening and transformation through unity, a positive path for spiritual living. For those of you watching on YouTube, live or later, be sure to say hi in the chat thread, like this video, and subscribe to the Unity of Fredericksburg YouTube channel. If you are able to attend live, we encourage you to join us in the Zoom community room for the full Sunday morning experience, including music, prayer, and connection. Send an email to info@uofva.org to receive the Zoom link. And for everyone local to Central Virginia, Unity of Fredericksburg offers a variety of fun and enriching in-person gatherings every month. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter at uofva.org for all the details. Our message today comes from our minister, Reverend Cheryl Fair. And now, here's Reverend Cheryl.
Thank you, Andrea, and welcome everyone. Whether you are watching live or later, we are happy to have you here as a part of Unity of Fredericksburg. Our broadcast date is June the 11th, Sunday, June the 11th. So we in 2023, here at Unity of Fredericksburg, we have a thread that we're following of talking about Unity foundations. And Unity is essentially a set of principles and practices that complement many belief systems. We have a three-part series happening here in June, focusing on practices, a series of practices that I call acknowledge, release, and affirm. These are 3 steps that will empower you to work with your own thoughts and feelings, to improve your agility and resilience as you move through the things that happen in your life, and to improve the quality of your life experiences. So last week, June the 4th, we talked about step 1, acknowledgement. And of course, you know that if you missed it, you can go back and find the recording. You can find it on the Unity of Fredericksburg website. That website address, you can see it right in my Zoom identifier there. You can see the website address. You can find it on YouTube. You can also find it a few days later on our Facebook page. So acknowledgement is a focus on getting real about what is happening in your life, in your body, in your circumstances. We talked last week about a practice of just pause and notice. Feel your feelings. Not all of us want to do that, but it's important for us to do that. We can't improve our lives until we acknowledge what's happening in our lives and stop doing things like avoiding, deferring, ignoring, pushing through, and bypassing what's actually happening. We need to pay attention right here and right now. And today we're talking about step 2, which I call intentional release. Now, in the historical Unity writings, this step is called denial. Now, the word denial has a lot of different meanings here in the 21st century than it did at the end of the 1800s when the Unity founders were putting it together, because that was before the advent of modern psychology. And anyone who's taken a psychology course, or basically, anyone these days, has an understanding of this word denial that is about psychological denial, which is what I was just talking about. And the acknowledgement thing is, a lot of us go into psychological denial of just like, la, 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 this is not happening. And we, of course, don't want to do that. We want to acknowledge what's going on. We're not in denial about the reality of our outer lives. So that's why I call it intentional release. But we do want to look back at our founders when we ask, okay, what is denial or intentional release? So I have a couple sources. One goes all the way back to the advent of the Unity movement, from H. Emily Cady and her book, Lessons in Truth. So here's what she has to say. What are we talking about here today? Denial is the first practical step toward wiping out of our minds the mistaken beliefs of a lifetime, the beliefs that have made such a sad havoc of our lives. By denial, we mean declaring not to be true a thing that seems true. Negative appearances are directly opposed to the teaching of truth. And she quotes scripture here from John 7:24. Jesus said, "Do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment." So there's one version. Here's a more modern version, and this is from a wonderful book from Reverend Linda Martella Whitsett. This book is called How to Pray Without Talking to God. Some people were shocked when that book first came out with that title, but of course in Unity, we are not addressing an entity outside of us. We are addressing the energy of the universe that's expressing as a part of us and that we are a part of, because we talk about oneness. So that's what that title refers to when it says we're not talking to something outside of us. So here is what Linda Martella Whitsett has to say, and her term for what we're talking about today is spiritual denial. Spiritual denial, also called release or renunciation, is disidentification with, repudiation of, and elimination of thoughts and beliefs that we realize are contrary to spiritual truth. So it's all these, I like to say, excuse my language, but crappy thoughts that we might have about what's going on. Like, I never get it right. This always happens to me. It's addressing those kinds of things. Our brain might be believing it's true, but we're like, that is not true. What is true is faith and power and strength, aspects of our divine nature. So let's look a little bit more of, is there, for those of you who appreciate referring to scripture, to the Bible, in particular, the teachings of Jesus, which is what Unity is based on. We've already heard one reference from Emily Cady referring to Jesus talking about not judging by appearances, and another place where we see the foundation of these practices that we're talking about, that the founders called denials and affirmations. In Matthew 5:36, Jesus says, "Let your words be yes, yes, and no, no." Listen to that. Let your words be yes, yes, and no, no. So the yes, yes part, that's the affirmations. And we're going to be talking about that in step 3, which is going to be on the last Sunday of June, June 25th. Today, we're talking about the no, no. And you do the no, no first. You do the no, no, and then you do the yes, yes. It's kind of like lots of people are talking about gardening this time of year. So in your garden, you are going to, in the acknowledgement step, identify those things that are weeds that you don't want growing right now. You do the no, no by pulling the weeds, and then you do the yes, yes by planting what you want. So let's take this. We've been doing a lot of kind of intellectual defining, and let's take a moment to just shift this out of our heads and into our hearts and our imaginations. We'll do that, and then I'll tell you how to do it, how to do this practice of intentional release. So just take a breath right now. Let's just take a pause and take a breath. And we're going to have a story time. Now, this is a story that you may have heard before. I did a little research to try to find the origins of this story, and the absolute origins are not documented anywhere, but a lot of times this story is attributed to American Indian sources. Most predominantly, I see it credited to as being a Cherokee Indian story. So this is the story of the 2 wolves. So an elder is teaching a young child about life. And the elder says to the child, "A struggle is going on inside me. It's an intense struggle between two wolves. One wolf is the spirit of anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. The other wolf is the spirit of joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same struggle is going on inside you, little one, and inside every other person too. The child's eyes were wide, imagining this intense struggle between the two wolves. And after a few minutes of thought, the child asked the elder, "Which wolf will win?" And the elder simply replied, "The one you feed." Which wolf will win? The one you feed. So underneath whatever you are struggling with is a troubled wolf that you are feeding. And that troubled wolf takes the form of ideas and thoughts and beliefs. Now, we all have fleeting thoughts, things that, kind of float through, like what you want to have for dinner. But we're talking about those thoughts that you really lean into and you give lots of emotion and energy to. So examples might be when you are worrying about your finances. You are feeding an underlying belief in lack. When you're dwelling in anger or resentment, you are feeding the wolf of unforgiveness. When you shy away from what might be a really good opportunity, chances are you are feeding beliefs about not being good enough, not being smart enough, not believing that good things will happen. When you're anxious about your health, and you're spinning stories in your head about all the bad things that might happen, you are forgetting to feed your faith in wholeness. And instead, you're feeding thoughts of illness and dis-ease. So this parable shows us that when you are stuck in these kinds of patterns, you are feeding the troubled wolf. You're giving it your energy, your focus, you're giving it your power. Often when you don't even realize it, because you might have patterns and beliefs that are in place that have been there for years and years and years. Here's another thing that Reverend Linda Martella Whitsett says about this, about things that we're carrying around in our consciousness that might have plants that have been planted in our garden way before we were adults. So let's hear what she says here. Much of what we believe we have unintentionally acquired, unknowingly held, and unconsciously enacted. This is especially true of limiting or negative beliefs because they are backed by strong emotion. So ultimately, what this story reveals to us is that we can make a different choice. We can make a different choice. We can choose to step into empowerment and make changes in our lives. We can use these practices that we've been talking about this month to support ourselves in making a different choice. So step one, again, acknowledge your feelings, take a moment to pause and notice that script that's coming up in your head again and the thoughts that are there, and just realize there you are. When you give it energy and lean into it, you're feeding the troubled wolf. Here we are at step two. All right. First, we need to make that choice. We want to stop doing this. In the metaphysical realm, we are choosing to make a shift in consciousness. And at the practical level, an intentional release is a statement that you create and repeat for yourself to help you learn to stop feeding that troubled wolf. Here's the script. Write it down. Do you have something to write with? I'll say it several times, and you can always go back to the recording, right? Here it is. Here's your script. I give no power to ... fill in the blank. I give no power to. So let's say you're obsessing about your health. I give no power to thoughts of illness and dis-ease. Please note, my friends, I am not saying illness has no power over me. That's not the way the script goes, because nothing outside of you has power over your thoughts unless you have granted it space in your consciousness. You are the ruler of your own consciousness, and this gives you the power to work with your thoughts and ideas. So here's the script again. I give no power to thoughts of ... Now, let's say your issue is finances. I give no power to beliefs in debt and lack. Now, I will say it's okay to be vague when it comes to this practice, because as we were talking about a few minutes ago, we might not always know what weed it is that's growing in our garden. All we know is that we just keep showing up in this same situation over and over again, or we found ourselves like down the rabbit hole of negativity. So it's okay to be vague. You don't have to know exactly what those beliefs are that are, in your consciousness. You can use generic terms. The most useful generic terms that I know of are referring to lack and limitation. So it doesn't take years of therapy to try to fish out what the beliefs are when you use this practice. You can just say, and here it is again, I give no power to thoughts of lack and limitation. So whenever you're in whatever situation has got you going here, and you've got contrary thoughts coming up, defeating thoughts and feelings coming up, take some time and create an intentional release statement for yourself. All right, keep it simple. Just use the script that I'm getting. I give no power to thoughts of yada yada, whatever it is. All right. So once you have it scripted, then you might want to kind of do your prayer, your meditation, and do it, say it with power, write it out. You can write it on a piece of paper and set it on fire, throw it away, whatever you want to do it, and let it go. Do it, do your release and let it go. Don't dwell there. Don't give it a lot of energy. Like say you've got an anger, resentment situation going on. Don't be leaning into all the reasons why, you know, all those kinds of things, because then guess what? You're feeding the wolf again. So you want to just do it and let it go. Unity founder Charles Fillmore referred to the energy of what he called this practice of denial as brushing away cobwebs in your consciousness, just clearing that out. So when you find yourself, you're getting ready to do something, that thought comes in, well, you screwed it up last time. It's just brush it away. I like a modern reference from Star Wars. You can tell when I grew up, because I'm referring to the very first Star Wars movie that was released. Obi-Wan Kenobi brushing aside the attention of the stormtroopers, saying, these are not the droids you seek. Just brush it aside. Some other helpful hints when it comes to this practice of intentional release. So we are not denying the facts or feelings of our lives, right? We've talked about that last week in acknowledgement. We're not using denial to say, my leg is not broken. No, if your leg is broken, your leg is broken, and we need to address things, all right? We are addressing how we navigate our outer world, how we work with our consciousness, what kind of words we say about our situation. We are intentionally releasing thoughts and beliefs that are not in alignment with our divine nature. So if I am grounded in my divine nature, and I know that I have strength, I know that I have faith, I know that I have imagination, then when those thoughts come up that it's like, I'm not good at this, we can brush that aside and we can follow it up with an affirmation. We'll talk about that at the end of the month on June 25th. We are reminding ourselves that any aspects of our current situation, because your current situation could be very uncomfortable, that it's temporary. It's temporary. Everything in our outer lives is changing all the time. If you're having a hard time today, chances are you'll work through it, and a week or two down the road, you'll be like, you're not even thinking about it anymore. So any of our thoughts that try to keep us locked into a negative situation, we are brushing that aside. We're letting it go. We are not identifying ourselves and our identity with a temporary condition. It's really easy for us to do this with health concerns when we use phrases like, I'm a cancer survivor. All that does is link you with a negative circumstance. So we are using an intentional release to identify with our wholeness rather than identifying with, the unfortunate circumstance that you're working through. And we are no longer giving power to thoughts that are out there in collective consciousness about how things always go. So, how a health condition, always goes. Well, that doesn't mean that it's true for you. Whether or not something is bad or not bad. There are lots of ideas out there in common culture about what's bad and what's good. And when you're in it, you need to be about you, not about all the things that people say or your family says or your neighbors say. So we don't give power to any of that. We give power to our divine nature and aspects of our divine nature. So I'm going to review one more time. So step one, acknowledge, pause and notice repetitive patterns in particular. Notice when you're feeling out of sync with the truth that you know of yourself. And realize it's time to do the work, right? Get quiet, listen within rather than listening without. Step two, set an intention for the belief underneath all of that to be released, an intentional release. Create a statement for yourself. Your statement will say, I give no power to thoughts of lack or limitation. Say it, write it, practice it, and let it go. This is a really, really powerful practice. I have found it useful in my own life, even dealing with things like flashbacks and traumatic memories, which I have from an accident that I was in several years ago. And I've found that this practice has been helpful in helping me to navigate those very choppy waters. So the third step in our 3-part series in June will be on June 25th. We will talk about affirmations. That's the essential follow-up. We pulled the weeds from our garden with our intentional release, and the essential follow-up is planting the good thoughts. And we'll talk about how to do that on June 25th. So as we come to a close, I just have one more thing to bring us back to this story about the 2 wolves. And I just want to remind you how important it is for you to love both of those wolves, because they're both parts of you. All right. We always have to be gentle and supportive with ourselves. Even when we know we have this negative pattern that we want to get into, our purpose here is not to blame or shame. Our purpose is to help that troubled wolf to heal. So we're going to move into meditation now. So take a couple of deep breaths with me, my friends. And if you wish, you can allow your outer eyes to drift closed and just come to this moment right here, right now. Just focus on the breath moving in and out of the body. Feel your body in your seat, your feet resting perhaps on the floor. Notice where your hands are resting, if they're in your lap or wherever it is that they are. Feel the air moving against your skin. And I'd like for you to slowly and gently do a scan of your body, starting at your feet and moving up through. And as we do, we want to encourage the body. The body has a memory for everything that we have been through since our very birth and probably even before. So as you scan through your body, we want to encourage it to release any attachments it has to negative circumstances, negative experiences, things that might have been troubling or traumatic. So we release attachments. We release attachments as we just skim our attention through the feet, up through the ankles, up through the knees, the legs, through your seat, through your torso. We're going to pause a bit in the area of the heart, knowing that this is an area where we process lots of emotions. So right here, right now, we're going to encourage our body to release any attachments to emotions around situations that happened in the past or worry about the future. Our power to affect change is right here, right now, in this moment. And we release any unhealthy attachments. We continue moving up through the body, through the arms, through the shoulders, the neck, up into our head. And we pause here and just talk to our thoughts and beliefs. And just let any thoughts and beliefs that are standing in the way of what you would like to do, what you would like to be, we just release those attachments with ease and grace. And now we are seated here, clear and open to the energy of the universe. And here we will pause in the silence together right now. And as we begin to bring our focus back to the here and now, we have identified with our energy things that we wanted to pull from the garden of our consciousness, the weeds that we no longer want to grow in consciousness. We take for a moment and bless them on their way. Pretty much everything that's growing in our consciousness was there for a reason. And if it's completed its time with you, we bless it. We thank it for the lessons that we learned along the way. And we let them go. We intentionally release them. And we dwell in this space of quiet gratitude. We prepare our consciousness for the planting of new seeds. And as we finish our time together, I will offer a denial that you can, an intentional release that you can say after me. We've said it before a few times here. I give no power to thoughts of lack or limitation. Say it with me again. I give no power to thoughts of lack or limitation. And now we'll follow that up with an affirmation. I am divine in nature, and I am grateful. Say it with me, friends. I am divine in nature, and I am grateful. One more time. I am divine in nature, and I am grateful. So I am, so are you, my friends. And I look forward to connecting with you again next time. Now I'm going to hand it back to our service leader, Andrea.
Thanks for watching the weekly broadcast from Unity of Fredericksburg. Visit our website, uofva.org, to learn more about our mission of spiritual awakening and transformation, and support our ministry with your financial donation.